From the Ear to There Travel Studio, this is the Ear to There Disney Podcast.
The Ear to There Podcast, it's time to start the show. Be sure to hold on tight, here we go. Exploring all the different Disney destinations. Ear to There, it's time to start the fun.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ear to There Disney Podcast. I am your host, Phil Gramlich. I'm also the owner and the founder of Ear to There Travel, which is a Disney specialized travel agency. It's my job, along with all of the vacationers on the Ear to There Travel team, to take away all the stress, all the anxiety, and all the time that it takes to plan a Disney trip so you can focus on the really, really fun things like having a phenomenal time with your family and friends and enjoying the magic. You can listen to this podcast, meet all of the vacationers, aka travel agents, on the Ear to There Travel team, or you can request your free, no obligation quote over at eartotheretravel.com. All right, this is a Word of the Week episode, and this week's Walt Disney World Word of the Week is brought to you by the letter S. S for C. It's confusing, right? S for C, but I am actually talking about S.E.A, which stands for the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. Now, admittedly, and I'm going to state this right at the jump, or right from the jump, I am not an expert on the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. I mean, I did notice these things become incorporated into attractions and restaurants and locations, but I didn't know a whole lot about it until my trip to Disneyland last month. I sat with a friend and we talked about the S.E.A, and it's fascinating. It's such a cool thing. So today I'm going to talk to you all about the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. And this society goes all the way back. It actually has its roots, believe it or not, in the Adventurers Club at Pleasure Island. And I'm sorry, I'm going to try to pronounce that all the way through. Adventurers Club. I talk kind of quickly. I don't know if you've noticed that before, and I kind of scramble over that last ER there, but the Adventurers Club at Pleasure Island. And there were all kinds of eccentric characters that lived at the Adventurers Club, like Samantha Sterling, who was an explorer and a cabaret singer, and Hathaway Brown, who was an aviator and the club's resident innuendo-making ladies' man. There was also Colonel Critchlow Sunchbench, and if you've seen videos or pictures of the Adventurers Club, you know him. He is the animated puppet or animatronic who would wake up from time to time to lead the new inductees to the Adventurers Club in their theme song, and he would also wake up to converse with the guests. So sadly, the Adventurers Club closed on September 27, 2008. And when it was finally closed and the building was sadly torn down, a lot of the props and the pieces from inside the Adventurers Club were saved. And then they were used in the refurbishments and new openings of attractions and restaurants all across the Disney properties. So Disney had a great opportunity to kind of expand on the idea of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. And this society actually began in Tokyo Disneyland in 2001. So more specifically, the first appearance of the S.E.A was in the Tokyo Disney Sea attraction, Fortress Explorations, which was an opening day attraction for that park. So in that attraction, guests are tasked with solving a series of challenges in order to join the S.E.A. And the backstory of the secret society is actually printed on the back of the map for that attraction. And I'm going to read that backstory to you now. So it says, and I quote, "The four symbols adorning the crest of the S.E.A. represent the organization's charter and the concepts that they deem most worthy. The galleon represents adventure, the armillary sphere, romance, the compass, discovery, and the artist's tools, innovation." That's the end of the quote. So this secret society includes members like Harrison Hightower III, Lord Henry Mystic, Barnabas T. Bouillon, Mary Oceaneer, and Dr. Albert Falls. Now you're going to recognize a few of those names already from attractions that you've been on. Barnabas T. Bouillon, of course, looks an awful lot like Tony Baxter and is in the Big Thunder Mountain attraction story. Mary Oceaneer sounds a little bit like the Oceaneers Club on the Disney cruise ships for the kids. Lord Henry Mystic, sounds a little familiar with Mystic Manor. And Dr. Albert Falls brings me right back to the story of the Jungle Cruise. So all these characters and this secret society that has been around since the 1500s has been woven into the backstories of the Disney parks and attractions over the last several years. Now, as far as Tokyo Disney Sea goes, you can also see the influence of the S.E.A. in Magellan's restaurant. Of course, the restaurant is named after Ferdinand Magellan, who was an explorer, but he's not a member of the S.E.A. But Magellan's has served as a meeting place for the society, and a secret wine cellar is hidden behind a bookcase in the restaurant. Now, here's another really cool one at Tokyo Disney Sea, and it's the Tower of Terror. So the Walt Disney World version of the Tower of Terror, of course, is inspired by the Twilight Zone, and it's actually in the name Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. That wasn't going to work in Tokyo Disney Sea. So when the Imagineers were building Tokyo's version of the Tower of Terror, they ditched the Twilight Zone altogether, and they created a brand new storyline that was built around the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, specifically around the Society's member, Harrison Hightower III. Now, you should look up Harrison Hightower III, Google him, because he bears a pretty uncanny resemblance to Disney Imagineer Joe Rohde. Now, I don't want to give too much away about the Tower of Terror in Tokyo Disney Sea, but apparently Harrison Hightower III collected these exotic and rare artifacts, and he stores them in his New York waterfront mansion. And one of the artifacts that he hides or keeps in the mansion is the Shiriki Atundu statue. And apparently this statue was cursed, and it had something to do with his disappearance. Now, the next place that was built with a storyline of the S.E.A. was actually Hong Kong Disneyland's Mystic Manor. So a new land was opened in 2013, Mystic Point, and in that land was built Mystic Manor. This is an e-ticket attraction. It's a trackless dark ride, so think kind of like how Rise of the Resistance operates. And this one is focused on, as I mentioned before, Lord Henry Mystic and his creepy-looking monkey, Albert. You're going to find a lot of references to the S.E.A. in Mystic Manor. You're even going to find a portrait of the S.E.A. members in the queue of this attraction. Now, pretty close by is the Explorers Club. And in the Explorers Club, which is a little bit of a further telling of Lord Mystic's story, you will find antiquities and animated masks and other things that originally were on the walls at the Adventurers Club in Walt Disney World. And even the Jungle Cruise in Hong Kong Disneyland has had an S.E.A. tie-in installed. So the overlay for Hong Kong Disneyland's Jungle Cruise is called The Curse of the Emerald Trinity. And this is a story about Professor Garrett Reed's attempt at getting the Emerald Trinity. Professor Reed was a former S.E.A. member that was kicked out of the S.E.A. by Lord Henry Mystic for the unscrupulous, that's a hard word to say, ways that he went about obtaining his artifacts. I know, this is a lot to take in. There's a lot of S.E.A. stuff written into the parks, and I haven't even gotten to Disneyland and Walt Disney World yet. Now, swinging over to Disneyland Paris, and they are pretty thin as far as I can tell on the S.E.A. stuff. There's a place called Colonel Hathie's Pizza Outpost, and there's a piece of luggage there with an S.E.A. sticker on the side. There's also the Cathay Hyperion, which got its name from the sailing of the airship, the Hyperion, by Captain Briot, who was a known member of the S.E.A. Now, if you're a more learned person than I am about the S.E.A. and I missed some stuff in Disneyland Paris, let me know. This is a house of learned doctors. I crack myself up. That's from Step Brothers, John C. Reilly. It's so funny. He says, this is a house of learned doctors. You and your mother are hillbillies. So funny. Anyway, so I had mentioned that the Society of Explorers and Adventurers also is aboard the Disney Cruise Line ships, and that's true. The Oceaneer labs on the ships, the kids clubs, are named after explorer Mary Oceaneer, and you can find a bunch of nods to her in the Oceaneer clubs, including including a portrait of her and her parrot. Now in Disneyland, there are also some S.E.A. nods and references. Of course, I had mentioned earlier, the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad has a portrait of S.E.A. member Barnabas T. Bouillon, who again looks a lot like Tony Baxter. And there's also some cargo there that's going to ship to a Jason Chandler. More on him in a second. Also, the Tropical Hideaway restaurant that's next to the Enchanted Tiki Room in Disneyland's Adventureland is decorated with various items from the S.E.A.'s members. Sorry, it's hard to say. And artifacts from their expeditions. Now, the first Walt Disney World, we're going full circle here, back to Walt Disney World, where it all started with the Adventurers Club. The first attraction to be infiltrated, I guess, by the S.E.A. was Big Thunder Mountain. Now, this story is similar to the one out in Disneyland, where the owner of the Big Thunder Mining Company, Barnabas T. Bouillon, I think it's pronounced Bouillon, right? Bullion. Yes, I just looked it up. I paused the recording and I looked it up, and I am pronouncing it correctly. Okay, so the queue for Walt Disney World's or Magic Kingdom's Big Thunder Mountain Railroad has letters between Barnabas T. Bouillon and a guy who I mentioned earlier named Jason Chandler, who has been communicating with Madame Zarkov, who is Jason Chandler's colleague at the Museum of the Weird. You've heard of Museum of the Weird, I know. Of course, Rolly Crump's idea that Walt Disney loved getting a little bit of love in the parks. Anyway, after consulting with his colleague, Jason Chandler is recommending that Barnabas T. Bouillon stop all mining activities at Big Thunder Mountain because there is a lot of supernatural activity going on at the location. So at Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Now, not too far from Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in Adventureland is the Skipper Canteen restaurant. And this place, according to the story, was used as a meeting place by the S.E.A. There's actually a meeting room, an S.E.A. meeting room that guests can eat lunch or dinner in. Now, the walls of this room are lined with bookshelves, and the bookshelves are full of books that are written by the S.E.A. members. Now, over at Typhoon Lagoon, in 2017, the new attraction Miss Adventure Falls debuted. And this attraction tells the story of Captain Mary Oceaneer, who I had mentioned earlier, who was a prominent member of the S.E.A., and her parrot. As a matter of fact, there is an audio animatronic character of her parrot in the queue. But wait, there's even more S.E.A. at Walt Disney World. And we're going to end it at this one because this one's my favorite. Well, it ties into my favorite film franchise of all time. And that is in Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar in Disney Springs. Of course, this bar, this restaurant, is named after Jock Lindsay, who was Indiana Jones's pilot at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, if you remember the movie, Indiana Jones escapes Belloc, the evil archaeologist, who's going to work with the Nazis later, and the natives, the Jovito, when he gets the idol from the temple in the beginning. He gets the idol, he runs past the dead Alfred Molina, who has been killed by a trap in the temple, gets stopped by Belloc and the Jovito after running out of the temple with the giant ball chasing him. So he somehow escapes those guys and is running to the plane, and there's his pilot, Jock Lindsay, fishing. And Indiana Jones is yelling at him, "Start the plane, Jock! Start the plane!" And then when they fly away, narrowly escaping the Jovito's arrows and darts, Indy's like, "There's a huge snake in a plane, Jock. I hate snakes. I hate them." And of course, Jock Lindsay says, "That's just my pet snake, Reggie. Come on, show a little backbone, will you?" I may have seen that movie once or twice or 500 times. Anyway, the bar is named after his pilot from that one scene, Jock Lindsay. And in the bar, when you look at the menu, you can see that Jock Lindsay was a member of the Society for Explorers and Adventurers. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Ear to Their Disney podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I realized that the entire time I was saying Society of Adventurers and Explorers, when in reality, as I found out at the end, it is actually the Society for Adventurers and Explorers. Listen, I can't go back and re-record the whole thing now because it was a lot of work to put it together and do the research. So I apologize to the fans of this secret society that I was getting it wrong a lot. Please forgive me, and I promise I won't make that mistake again. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you are having a great week with your family, with your friends when you listen to this episode, when you hear this. If you did enjoy it, do me a favor, share it with somebody. Just tell someone you know about the podcast, or on social media, or on the phone, or over Zoom. Listen, I'd really appreciate it. I will keep the episodes coming. Please keep listening. Thank you again so much for listening to this one. And until next time, have a phenomenal week, a phenomenal day. Stay safe, stay healthy. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Ear to their